Get started. Great. Hello, everyone. This is Tukan from LeadSift here. Welcome to another episode of Driving Content with Intent. This week, I have Francis Adanza from Testim.io. Francis is the head of marketing at Testim. Welcome to the show, Francis.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. So I guess before we get started, Francis, do you want to give a quick overview of what Testim does?
Yep. So we provide a AI-based end-to-end test automation platform to make it easy for developers and automation engineers to test the UI on their web apps.
Awesome. Cool. So just for the context of everyone, Francis gave me some input around who they're targeting in terms of their ideal customer profile, what their competitive landscape looks like. And based on that, what we have done, and we're going to reveal to Francis live, is we are going to showcase what kind of topics their ICP is consuming, what kind of topics their competitors are creating content on, and how that compares with the topics you are creating about, and the same thing with industry events and trade shows. So without wasting any further time, let's dive into the data. So to begin with then, Francis, in terms of topics, let me ask you this. You guys are creating a ton of content obviously on testing, test automation, and those kind of things. What are the primary kind of content types are you guys creating? Is it more blogs, ebooks, webinars? What kind are you guys doing?
I mean, all of the above. We cover these topics like you've laid out here, but we're doing like white papers, ebooks, webinars, long form, short form articles. We try to participate in all of the message boards, forums, communities where our buyers are hanging out and trying to get more information about these topics.
Got it. And in terms of distribution then, Francis, let's say you create an ebook or a white paper or a blog or something like that. How are you guys currently distributing this content? What are some channels?
So a lot of it is like content syndication through the third-party publishers that our buyers are subscribed to. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is participating in like Stack Overflow, Quora, Reddit, a lot of the Slack channels where our users are hanging out. And if we have content that adds value to that conversation, we will publish it there as well. So it goes hand in hand as contributors in these communities. We're paying attention to what are the trending topics and what is controversial. Then we take that information.
Yeah.
We then try to cover it and share our perspective on it, and then rebroadcast it back to the same people that were discussing it.
Got it. And in terms of the topics that you guys create content on, or I guess a content marketing strategy, Francis, how often do you guys come up with a content marketing strategy? Is it done at a yearly level, or every quarter you come up with high-level topics you're going to create content on? How does that work?
It's done quarterly.
So every quarter you sit together with your content marketing team and come up with the topics?
Exactly. So, I mean, a lot of it is geared around like our SEO. So one is understanding like what are the keywords and things that we want to rank for.
Yep.
And two is understanding like what are the content topics that can be paired with those keywords, and then planning accordingly in terms of the ability to rank given the competitive nature of that, as well as the volume of search for it. So then that helps us kind of prioritize. And then as well as we try to think of new things and what are some things that people aren't talking about that we think should be important. And that all gets prioritized in like the consideration for how we want to create the content, and then what is the mediums by which we plan to distribute it over the course of that quarter.
Got it. So hopefully what we should get out of our discussion today, what we'll show you, Francis, is definitely give you some interesting ideas about what topics to create content on, if there is a greenfield space there. And how the content topics you're creating currently content on, how that relates with your ideal customer profile, which if I have it correctly here, Francis, you are basically trying to go companies between 200 to 2,000 employees. So, smallish enterprise to mid-size enterprise companies in North America, UK as a market. And within them, you typically sell into obviously the QA engineers, anyone with regards to quality assurance, and senior engineering people within organizations.
Absolutely. I mean, the other thing it's not a big miss, but I mean, our roots are from Israel, so we're focused on that market as well. And then the actual users of the product would be what you have here, full stack or front end developers, as well as QA engineers. The decision makers are usually like senior management engineering titles, like what you have here.
Got it. Do you see the CTOs getting involved in the decision process, or VP of engineering?
I mean, in like the 200 to maybe about 1,000. Once it gets above that, it usually falls at like that director level.
Got it. Cool. So that's great. So, and the other thing is, in terms of competitors, you have your usual suspects like the user testing, TestRail, Soap UI, Sauce Labs, Rainforest QA. And I'm guessing when we analyze the data, we looked at these 5, and there were about 18 more players in that ecosystem. Do these companies sort of in the ecosystem that you play in, Francis?
So, I mean, no one here, like Rainforest and user testing, they're more of like a service oriented. We both try to get to the same outcome in terms of higher quality software, faster releases for our customers, but it's 2 different approaches.
Exactly.
In regards to TestRail, we'd actually, and Sauce Labs, we actually partner with them.
Okay.
So we're complementary in that sense.
Got it.
And Soap UI, not quite sure. I mean, it could be complementary, could be competitive.
Got it. So Rainforest and user testing are approaching the problem that both of you guys are trying to solve from a services component. You guys are doing it purely from an AI perspective and automated manner.
Exactly.
Got it. Cool. So with this as input, Francis, what we did was we basically entered into the system these companies, and there were a few others, Testleo, and there were a couple other companies. We fed that into the LeadSift system as an input. And then what we did was we filtered the data also by your ICP and tried to figure out 2 things. We tried to figure out what kind of topics are your ICP currently consuming content about, so that you get an idea of what you should be writing content about, what are the things that are top of mind for them, and also look at what kind of content topics are your competitors creating content about or not creating content about, so that you get some ideas about interesting topics to create content on. So with that being said, let me move to the next slide. So these were some of the topics that full stack developers, QA engineers, even director of engineering people, front-end developers were currently talking about at a high level. So DevOps was one of the most talked about topics of interest from your ICP, the 200 to 2,000 sized companies, and senior engineering and QA people. They were talking a lot about that. I guess DevOps is a pretty broad topic in general to talk about. Other interesting topics that we saw was test automation was obviously another thing, software testing, test management, all related to testing. There were quite a bit of discussion that I found out was around cybersecurity and malware detection. That was an interesting topic that a lot of engineers and QA people were consuming content about. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the DevOps stuff is huge. But I think it's a broad topic category. For us, that would be like very spot on would be Selenium test automation, software testing. I mean, test management is part of the conversation. We would integrate with that. The Scrum, I mean, alongside of like Agile, makes a lot of sense. The malware was pretty interesting. I mean, it would go hand in hand with like DevSecOps, but that's not so much I don't see that around I mean, test automation could be kind of broad too, but not so much around like end-to-end functional testing.
Got it. One of the things, and we'll show in the later slide, Francis, what we did was we looked at these topics and we actually dove deeper into each of these topics to come up with subtopics around each one of them, like DevOps. What specifically about DevOps were they talking about? Same with Selenium, test automation, and even malware. We'll showcase that, some of these subtopics. So given what kind of content you guys are creating, outside of malware, most of these topics you guys are touching on your content, right? From a high level topic perspective.
Yep.
Currently.
Yeah, we have stuff, not really around test management. I mean, we have some documentation around what we do there, but everything around like software testing, test automation, Selenium, a couple articles on DevOps.
Cool. Okay. So the next piece that we did was we looked at the content that you are creating content on currently, and then compared that with your competitors. So to the left-hand side of the screen, Francis, are the blue ones are the ones that you are currently creating content on. So test automation strategy and design, code versus codeless software testing. Those are things that you guys are creating quite a bit of content on. Your competitors, interestingly enough, were specifically talking a lot about Selenium explicitly, DevOps as a high-level topic. RPA actually came up with as an interesting topic, robotic process automation, cybersecurity, and I think that relates to the malware piece. So that's interesting. Your competitors are touching on some of the ICPs, what they care about. Shift left testing. This is, I guess, a unique thing with testing methodology that a lot of your competitors are creating content on. And the one in the middle are the common overlap that we saw. So browser testing, you guys are creating content on. Testing and AI, some of your competitors are creating content on that. Continuous testing was another one. That was quite a bit of an overlap. Given what you see here, Francis, what are your first thoughts about the topics your competitors are creating content on that?
So the amount of RPA cyber security is interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Everything else sounds pretty much spot on.
Awesome. And RPA, do you guys come across companies that are doing some kind of automation and robotic process automation in needing end-to-end testing?
Not really. We don't come across that, I don't think, at all.
That's very interesting. Maybe some of your customers, because a couple of them were actually doing webinars about RPA and how to use end-to-end testing in there. So that's an interesting thing that we found out. Might be worthwhile investigating this further, both from an SEO perspective, Francis, I would say, and also from a content creation perspective, how that lines up. Now,
yeah, definitely something to look at.
So one interesting thing is, as I said, then we dug deep into each of these high-level topics and saw what were the subtopics that were there. So in DevOps, the couple subtopics that were being content created on and consumed were on load testing and rapid delivery. That was a big thing. Like not every, DevOps is pretty broad, but around load testing, how to handle that and writing test cases for those kind of things. So that was a big thing. If you look at the last one, security. So cybersecurity was a big topic. In cybersecurity, there were specifically discussions around malware, threat hunting. How do you write test cases for that? And the other subtopic that we found was very interesting was malware reverse engineering. So how do you write test cases to prevent around that? So apparently, looks like there are some malwares and there are multiple different kinds of malwares, but things around, how to prevent around reverse engineering from malwares, how to write test cases for preventing that. That was an interesting subtopic that we found.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think those subtopics are in line with the broader topics.
Yeah. The other thing that we found around Selenium was people talking about WebDriver API, which I believe is a module of Selenium.
Correct.
There was a lot of discussions around that. Not only discussions, content being created around that. And the other one within Selenium was implicit versus explicit waiting when running test cases. In test management, buffer overflow, how to test for buffer overflow, which is a classic error that happens, writing test cases for that. And exploit dev. That was also a subtopic that we found that people were, I think it might relate a little bit with security too. So these are some of the subtopics we found. Now, I guess a question to you, for you, Francis, is given the fact that you guys come up with content topics on a quarterly basis, figuring out which content aligns with your SEO, what your target market is talking about, where there's an opportunity. If I gave you these kind of these insights based on what we found out, again, this is all in the last 60 days, between September 1 to end of October, that's where we collected this data from. If I gave you these topics and subtopics, both from a competitive and ICP perspective, how do you see this being used in your content planning strategy?
Well, one, I try to understand like the intent behind this and like, you know, what specifically is working for our competitors, given these topics, like, you know, how much of the SEO mind share are they getting from these topics to grow like their website traffic, to get leads, and just understanding like where those like what's successful and what's working. I think the world isn't short on content, right?
Absolutely.
It's really trying to figure out like, you know, how that content is being consumed for the user, the value that it's bringing to them, as well as what the value it's bringing to that business. So there's I just try to further analyze how these pieces of content are working for those competitors, and whether or not we need to be in that or continue to think differently and go for stuff that doesn't have as much coverage and is more greenfield.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense. Do you use any tools like SEM Rush or anything like that?
Ahrefs.
Ahrefs. Cool. So one of the things you do is take some of these topics or subtopics and plug it in Ahrefs and see what kind of traffic it's driving to your competitors.
Correct.
Cool. So that was around the topics and content creation. The second part of our analysis, what we looked at, Francis, were around what kind of events are your competitors going to and sponsoring, and what kind of events where your ICP is going, like the full stack developers, full stack developers, QA engineers, what kind of events they were going to. Before I show you that, one quick question: is event marketing a big part of your strategy?
It hasn't been, but it's something that we're taking a serious look at and starting to do. We've been really focused on the digital channels. Yeah. We sponsor a lot of live events, but do it remotely. So they might have the live meetup, but we're only sponsoring it digitally, being on like the page or some signage or sending swag and things over there.
Got it.
Or part of like the meetup email marketing.
Yeah.
But now, as we are, you know, trying to host our own events in addition to speaking at other ones. I mean, we have several members on the team that are active speakers and contributors at a lot of the conferences in our space. But now we're trying to facilitate and promote our own events and bring people to those.
Got it. So what we found out was your competitors were pretty active in the event space. They were sponsoring quite a few developer-focused events. And there were some very interesting insights we saw. So on the blue side are the events that your competitors are going. And on the right-hand side, the green is where the ICP is going. So a lot of your competitors are sponsoring SaaStr, which is a very startup-focused event. Google Next. DevOps Expo London was a big event that quite a few of your competitors were going. In terms of an overlap, AWS reInvent. AWS had a recent event in Sydney that was attended. The couple ones that we found were DevOps Days and Star West Techwell. Did you know of these events, Star West Techwell and DevOps Days?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with all of these events. They're all pretty big, but I mean, also a lot of them are pretty broad. So other than DevOps Days and Star West Techwell,
yeah,
or the DevOps Expo,
yeah,
and STPCon, I mean, though, like the DevOps one would have like testing tracks,
yeah,
but it's not like a major focus of the event itself, versus
that's right.
Star West and STP would be full on testing and
Yeah.
everything in the testing world. I mean, all the other heavy developer focused events, I don't even think they have testing tracks, but I definitely could see why they're going there.
Yeah. So you're right. Like the DevOps Days and Star West Techwell were attended both by your ICP, like QA engineers, and your competitors were there. The one that I think might be an interesting opportunity for you guys is PyCon. They might have one or two talks about testing. I don't think they have a dedicated track around that, but a lot of the people that end users that might use Testim were attending PyCon. Serverless Conf was also an interesting conference that we saw a lot of people in that. Again, this is all temporal, right? I analyzed it in September. It's very different versus when I analyzed in December, and that's the beauty of it. But these were a couple other events that, from a greenfield space, your competitors were not going, but a lot of the ICP between those 200 companies and above to 2,000, they were attending them. So that might be something worthwhile checking in, whether you guys sponsor or speak or something like that. So these were the other insights that we found from an event attendance and sponsorship perspective. That's all I had in terms of an analysis, Francis. So I guess my question to you is, would this kind of information help guide your quarterly content planning or maybe annual 2020 event planning strategy? Would this kind of information be helpful in your, if you have it in your back pocket?
I mean, it would be, and kind of like even a little bit more broken down. So, I mean, part of the content is looking at tracks that are going on at these events. So part of the research looks at some of that, looking at like the headlines and the abstracts and trying to just get a sense of like who's talking about it. I mean, is it a competitor that's speaking over there? What are they talking about? Or is this an actual practitioner that is doing it? So we take a lot of this. It is extremely manual. If there's a way to aggregate it and make it more easily available and consumable without having to spend an hour reading through the speaker lineup and all of those abstracts, there'd be a ton of value there. But it is something that we're essentially doing manually.
Got it. Yeah. And the goal, this is, I mean, from a LeadSift perspective, you're familiar with LeadSift. This is sort of what we provide as a report every quarter to our customers as a part of the customer success. What we really provide is actually, we will tell you, which are the companies or prospects that are attending DevOps Days or PyCon or Star West Techwell or talking about malware or Selenium WebDriver API. That's what we would do. Cool. So that's all I had from a presentation and insight perspective. Francis, hopefully this was useful use of your time. I thank you again, but hopefully this gave you some insights around that you can share with your content marketing team or other marketing functions within Testim. I'll send over this presentation after the call, but any parting thoughts?
So if I don't get any leads at PyCon, are you gonna reimburse me?
That would be if you spend money on PyCon and you don't get any leads, yes, and we have it on video. So yeah, we'll do that. But
thank you.
No, thank you very much, Francis. Hopefully this was useful for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the sweet analysis and definitely look forward to seeing the more granular report.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you so much. I guess I'll stop the recording.